Hello, I'm Greg Hartjes, Superintendent for the Appleton Area School District. In this 9th video, I'm going to answer the question on what do we spend our funding. So in many of my videos, I've talked about our funding and the fact that it has not kept pace with inflation for the past 3 years, and it has caused us to have this $13 million deficit. But now what I want to talk about is how do we spend those funds that we receive. And this is a simple graph that comes from the Department of Public Instruction. So all of this information that I'm going to share with you, you can find on the DPI. As a school district, we have to report it to the DPI. We also have to have an outside firm audit all of our finances, which we do annually. And what you can see here is that we spend over half of our dollars on instruction, and then a large portion goes to operations, pupil services, facilities costs. But I'm going to break down all of these in a per dollar amount. So this is how we spend every dollar. It starts with 54 cents. So over half of our spending is on instruction, and that makes sense, right? That's what we do. We're schools. So that's going to be teachers. It's going to be paraprofessionals, used to be called teachers' aides. It's anything that supports curriculum, equipment, and materials. It's classroom technology like Chromebooks for students and boards in front of the classroom, and then co-curricular activities. And I'll talk a little bit more about co-curricular activities later in the video because we get a lot of questions around that. Okay, the next largest spending item is going to be on operations. That's going to be our technology services, insurance. That insurance is property, casualty, workers' comp insurance. It's over $1 million. Open enrollment out of our district is seen as an expense. And then obviously we have a revenue stream that comes with open enroll into our district. Then it's human resources, that department, our business department, phones, printing, copy machines, postage across our entire district, and then school administrative assistants and other non-instructional positions. These are going to be secretaries for the most part that are working in our schools. The next dollar amount here is 12 cents out of every dollar is on student services. These are specific positions that work directly with students, social workers, school counselors, psychologists, nurses, deans. So again, in our schools, working with students, 12 cents out of every dollar. And then 7 cents on facilities. That's maintenance, cleaning, and utilities of our buildings. So now we've spent 87 cents out of every dollar. The next amount is 6 cents on administration. That's going to be obviously our administrators, but beyond that, it also includes administrative assistants. And then there are some other positions like our communications coordinator. We have a community liaison position. Those are considered part of administration. They're not administrators, but part of the administrative costs that you see here. Next is 5 cents out of the dollar on food, community services, primarily food. Here we're serving breakfast and lunch, and we do get reimbursed from the federal government for that, but obviously it has to be budgeted for. And then the last amount, 3 cents, is on student transportation. We bus less than a third of our students, so it's any student that lives outside of 2 miles, or it is going to be private school busing. We actually, even though we get no funding for it, public schools have to cover the cost of private school busing. And then we have special education transport. So some of our students, being on a bus with 70 students just doesn't work based on their disability, and they might be in a cab, and that's less than 100 students. So that is that final amount there. I want to break down administrative costs, like I said. And the reason is this is an area that we hear the most about in terms of whether we're being fiscally responsible. There is a perception in our community, and really most communities feel that districts have too many administrators in the district office or too many administrators overall. And it is a perception, but it simply is not the reality in Appleton. If you go to the DPI website, you will see that we spend 36% less than the state average on administrators. And it makes sense. Overall, we're spending 10 to 12% less than the average across all of our schools, but a large portion of that underspending is on administrators. If we spent at the state average, we would have 25 more administrators in our district. Now we have 71 administrators, 46 of those work in our schools. They're either principals or assistant principals. And we have 25 district administrators. And those 25 district administrators, obviously, I'm one as a superintendent. We have 3 assistant superintendents, and one works at each level. So one works at elementary, one at middle, and one at high school. And then they also have several other duties that go with their role and support the district. And so those are 3 assistant superintendents. We have 6 administrators working in what would be considered operational. One oversees our tech services department, IT. We have 2 in human resources. We have 1 in facilities, 1 in operations, and 1 in finance. Now, I don't know that you would find another employer that has 2,000 employees, $300 million budget, and we educate 15,000 kids from 9,000 families. We do that with 6 salaried people in operations. Everybody else in those departments is an hourly employee. We have 7 administrators in assessment, curriculum, and instruction. Again, each of them have a specific function. 1 supports all fine arts in the district. 1 supports high school, or I should say secondary, middle and high school, science, math, technology, and then also health and human performance. So just a little idea of what those positions are doing. And then we have 8 special education, student services, and English learners. So that means they're overseeing the work that is specific to students with special education IEPs. That's about 2,500 students for us. Student services is going to be working with everything that goes into attendance, behaviors, mental health, as you can imagine. And then 1 administrator working with our students that are learning English as a second language. Now, if we were to cut those 25 positions, their salaries would be less than a quarter of our deficit. So a lot of people have said you'll solve your financial problems if you just get rid of all of your district administrators. Clearly, we would have nobody to run the district, but it is less than a quarter of the $13 million deficit that we have. All right, the other area that we hear a lot of feedback on, certainly when we surveyed the community, where they thought we could cut expenses other than administrators, is co-curriculars. And this is our entire co-curricular budget for elementary, middle, and high school. And this is going to be sports, clubs, it's activities, some of our debate, forensics, theater, all of these STEM clubs at the elementary school all come out to be about $2.8 million. And, a lot of people look at our facilities and maybe they're frustrated by our facilities, whether gyms or weight rooms or turf fields. But the reality is that those spaces are used by far the most of any of our spaces. You think about in our schools, classrooms, libraries, offices, they're used for school days for about 8 hours, whereas our facilities like gyms and fitness centers, they're used before school and after school. They're used all day long for physical education, and then they're used on weekends and all summer long. So really the spaces in our district that get used the most are these facilities.